No, I told her, I said, on the housing thing?
For it to be recorded, like to hear.
Here he is. Director Freya, can we do a sound check with you?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Now we're unmuted.
Okay.
How do we turn down the volume? Director Freya.
Am I too loud?
Not
Yeah, you're pretty bright and shiny there on the volume.
well. We definitely know it works.
But nobody held their ears, so we're good to go.
Yeah,
All right, I'd like to call to order the March 17th meeting, or the workshop, a housing and homeless workshop for the Merced County Association of Governments. We'll do roll call and all that stuff later. So, do I need to have public comment?
I'm sorry.
Oh, we do need roll call. So we'll do roll call at this time.
Director Aguilar? Director Kale?
Here.
Director Espinoza?
Present.
Director Faria?
Here.
Director Hogue? Director McDaniel? Director Nagy?
Here.
Director Pedroso?
Here.
Director Serrato? Director Silvera? Thank you.
Oh, I know. Did you say Director Pereira? And I missed it.
Chair Pereira?
She looked at me and she saw me talking to you,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm just teasing. So, here.
And we do have a quorum.
Okay, so at this time, we'll ask for public comment. Is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to make public comment? Or raised hands?
There are no raised hands at this time, Mr.
Thank you. Anybody in the room that would like to make public comment? Thank you. We'll move to item 3, discussion on regional homeless. Turn it over to Stacy and John.
Well, I will make this quick and just welcome John Checkley once again to lead the discussion on this effort. So, John, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Oh. You're on.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair, Board of Directors for Merced County Association of Governments. John Checkley, Deputy Director for Merced County Human Service Agency, Housing Homeless Services. This is the third quarterly meeting I've been able to attend and provide a 30-minute brief update on homeless services in Merced County. For today, I wanted to review the Merced City and County Continuum of Care point in time count. The point in time count is conducted annually here in Merced County during the last 10 days of January, typically by volunteers. This year we had over 70 volunteers to go countywide and conduct the count. It's in all the jurisdictions that are represented by the Board of Directors here. I thought it would hold some interest. It typically does. It's what we use to as one of the barometers to gauge how we're doing as a community when it comes to addressing homelessness in the various districts. Couple updates. I know in the first presentations we talked about some of the services and funding, kind of our current state and future state. I am happy to report this week, I believe the press release was completed today by the City of Merced. The City of Merced was an applicant on a home key application for 21 units of housing using converted shipping containers as modular buildings. They were awarded over $4 million with their co-applicant 915 custom containers for 20 units of housing for veterans in the community. And we'll review the veteran numbers here as well. Overall, it's probably the most well understood population. We have a by name list on February 18th. There were 36 veterans in Merced County. Since then, we've opened, in partnership with the Merced Rescue Mission, who did all the work, a campus, part of their 5-acre campus, and have housed they're going to house eventually up to 10. I don't know if they're at capacity. Currently, there was a nice ABC 30 article on those veterans where we got some testimonials from them. So it's going to be 30 units of homeless housing, or excuse me, it's permanent supportive housing for homeless veterans. So with a number of 36, we're really excited to hopefully get to single digits and a place where we can reach functional zero on homeless veterans in Merced County. So a lot of effort's gone into that activity, a lot of resources, and we're starting to see those resources flow into Merced County. There's also one additional pending home key application for 90 units of housing, and these housing units are restricted to individuals experiencing homelessness through the acquisition of a motel, and we should be hearing an announcement on that in the next couple weeks. All told, we have about 215 units in some kind of production, either getting ready to open, receiving awards, or in an application phase, and all of those units, all 215, are restricted to folks who are experiencing homelessness. So we'll see the numbers here. 215 is representative of about a quarter of the population we're currently tracking as experiencing homelessness in Merced County. So please, next slide, please. We'll go through a few of these relatively quickly. I'm hopeful that this presentation is also on all of your computer screens. Otherwise, it's going to be relatively small. And the process for the point in time count, like we said, we received the draft yesterday. Wanted to.
Oh, just for the people that this is the bottom purple button will allow what's on the screen to come onto your computer. Oh, there you go. Okay, sorry for the interruption, but thank you.
So the process for this, we conduct the count last 10 days of January. This year, for the first time, we used an app in order to help us count, and there's some subpopulation data that's entered on this app. So it's literally real time with GIS mapping. So we're starting to incorporate some technology into how we conduct the count and make sure we're not duplicating folks. Page 2, what we're looking at here is some acknowledgments of some of the volunteers who participated. Next slide. And some of the organizations that were crucial in making this happen. We've conducted the count, and we need to note last year's count, the 2021 count, was a visual count only because of COVID. HUD wasn't allowing us to gather some of the subpopulation data, so we weren't sure how many folks were veterans or experiencing chronic homelessness, et cetera. Whereas this year we were able to conduct those subpopulation surveys. Next slide. It's just a table of contents, and I'll be sure once the COC board approves this as a final document that everyone on this board of directors receives this document. That will occur on the first Thursday in April, so a few weeks from today. We'll be able to provide this, share this more broadly. The next slide, please. So just some background information, how the count's conducted, when it's conducted, who's conducting the count, and how you are counted as homeless. So basically you have to be living in a place not meant for human habitation, or we do what's called the sheltered count. So if you're living in an emergency shelter or transitional housing, you'll also be counted as homeless. Next slide, please. So at the bottom here, you can see the overall total number of persons. We saw a 2% increase, so 20 more individuals were counted this year than last. Last year we had, I believe it was a 31% increase, so we really met kind of, we kind of held our own this last year in services. You also can see the comparison from 21 to 22 on the number of sheltered and unsheltered. So we've seen a 107% increase, plus 28% in sheltered individuals versus unsheltered. And we saw a 87% reduction in unsheltered, or a 19% reduction overall. And that's, based on the resources and based on the regional strategy we've had, where we've opened navigation centers, implemented emergency shelters countywide through distributive housing. That clearly kind of reinforces where those projects are and the impacts they're having. People who are in unsheltered spaces are very hard to deliver services to. They obviously have a really high negative impact on quality of life for other residents in our community. Those in shelters, all of our shelters have associated case managers at those shelters, so everyone is connected to some type of support. They're all assessed. They're all connected to resources, whether it's behavioral health resources, income resources. A good example of that is in Los Baños. We've got a shelter that we opened on November 1st, and through the last several months, 14 of those individuals were connected to employment. And kind of embarrassingly surprised that there's such a high number of folks that, you know, when they're unsheltered living on the streets, they're not able to gain employment, but providing them some shelter in a motel, they're able to get connected to even just things, simple things that we take for granted, like hygiene. You know, take a shower, access to clean clothes, and then connected to employment. So obviously 14 is a great number. We've also connected 8 folks in that shelter to permanent housing, and we have 3 more pending, and that all occurred between January 4th and today. So in about a 70-day time span or so, we're able to connect 8 folks into permanent housing, some of them reconnecting with family members. In the 6 months prior to that, in Los Banos, we had connected 3 people to permanent housing. So by having this shelter, it becomes a focal point for services and services providers. It allows people stability and safety to start working on some of those other challenges that they face, and then really move on to either permanent housing, employment, some type of reunification with family, and therefore self-sufficiency. Next slide, please. Some comparative charts, just different visuals on what that count looks like overall, and 5-year comparison to where we were at in 2018 and where we are today in 2022, and then the by jurisdiction, by area. So you'll have incorporated jurisdictions like Atwater, where the unsheltered count was 15, sheltered count of 44, and an overall count of 59. And we go through jurisdiction by jurisdiction. I think on the next slide, what you'll see is the comparison. We're typically trying to compare ourselves to last year to see how well we're doing or where we have areas of improvement. Table 3 there, the 21 to 22 comparison of unsheltered and sheltered persons by jurisdiction. There's a lot of asterisks, there's double asterisks and triple asterisks. You can see there was a significant reduction in Atwater for unsheltered persons, a significant 58% reduction of unsheltered individuals in Los Banos. In Merced, we held steady at 224. Santanella saw a 18% reduction, and Winton saw a 59% increase. So this allows us to look at like how we're doing year over year, and compare where we need to direct services and the sheltered versus unsheltered. Immediately adjacent to that is a 21-22 sheltered person count. I think it's very important. We had a 20-person increase overall in shelter. Excuse me, overall in our point in time count. In shelter, we saw a significant increase, 107 persons. A large majority of those are families. So we had 155 family members, children and parents that were sheltered in 2021. In 2022, that number jumped up to 216. So when you look at that overall increase and why that's, it's not necessarily great news that we have a lot of families. All of those families that are sheltered are connected to HSA. They've all got a case manager. They're all have been deemed eligible for housing support program. They all have someone working with them, at least contacting them monthly on housing searches. They have vast resources behind them, and they're not on the streets. We did have 5 children that were counted as unsheltered during the count, 3 of them in Santanella and 2 of them in Merced. When I saw that, I immediately made a phone call. If there's any crisis response we have in our system, it's for families specifically, right? We have resources for them. There's no reason we should have a family. We've seen it where maybe an undocumented mom would stay in an RV and maybe not try to access services. So whenever we see that, we make sure that there was some kind of response to unsheltered children. In this case, there was. We had same-day response. The 2 in Merced were actually already enrolled in HSA programs, and the 3 children in Santanella, we had an outreach worker contact them the same day. I only made that inquiry yesterday. I'm not sure of the outcomes, but just want to really put that out there. We do a really good job of keeping children in some kind of shelter, and even seeing a number as low as 5. When I talked to the gentleman who put this together, for comparison, I think it was Riverside, their unsheltered children count was 300. So just to put that in perspective on the scale of our challenge and the scale of some of these other jurisdictions in California. So again, we look at this as kind of a hopeful report, especially with the resources the state's making available and the county's taking advantage of for housing such as Home Key, or the county application for No Place Like Home, or the affordable housing development on Childs and B that has 119 units. So we're looking at this. If we can hold steady now while we bring these housing resources in, I hope to be in front of you in a year from now and talking about a double-digit decrease in the overall shelter, or the overall point in time count. And if we don't see that, I would frankly be surprised and also really disappointed, because we've worked really hard to get to a place where we will start seeing some real progress. Although we see it here, with the 2% increase, I'd really like to see a double-digit decrease next year, and I think it's possible for us to attain that. Next slide, please. There's going to be a lot of methodology and breakdowns now. Gender, next slide, race and ethnicity. One thing on page 10 here, the African American or Black population, it's about 4% of Merced County. The state is very focused, as are we, on equity and services. So we see this as an opportunity. When you see such a disproportionate, I'd also point out like the Asian population of 4 and 1.1, and then when we get to ethnicity, Hispanic or Latino at 37%. Those communities seem to really, we talk a lot about homelessness as a lack of social supports. Those communities have, real broad family structures that seem to provide some resources for individuals. I know in the Asian community, in the Hmong community, we very rarely see anyone there who's homeless. I know we had a success story last year that I talked to the Healthy House representative. I'm like, this was a great success story. We had this family in Project Room Key, and then we connected them to Healthy House, and now we're permanently housing them, and they're in their 80s. We should really promote this as how we've all come together and gotten this family that was hugely at risk. And she taught me, she's like, well, there's something going on, John, that you probably don't know, because in this community, folks who are experiencing homelessness may be ostracized in some sense, and you could actually be jeopardizing them by thinking this is a great story we could publicize. So it was a lesson for me that community comes together and takes care of its own, and when there's someone who does fall into homelessness, those social supports have been shattered, and hence the homelessness. So a good lesson for me, and I look at these numbers, and we'll have to parse through them and direct services to make sure we're culturally sensitive and addressing these challenges under that scope and that vision. Next slide, please. We focus a lot on unsheltered for good reasons. They're really the most vulnerable. They're the most likely to be chronically homeless, to have been out there for a long time, to suffer from mental health issues, or challenges. So we really focus on these subpopulations here. The Continuum of Care Board has prioritized veterans, families, seniors, all of these subpopulations here. The Continuum of Care Board is really focused on us directing services. You'll see there were 12 unsheltered veterans, and I believe it's 17 sheltered veterans for 29. To me, that validates this report and the thoroughness of it. We're somewhere between 30 and 36, like we saw on February 18th in the homeless veteran population. So for them to have actually accounted for 29 lets me know that they're accounting for the majority of people that we're tracking on our by name list. So it really helps validate the accuracy of this report. This report, the count is conducted between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. It's, in the last 10 days of January, where the weather's typically pretty inclement. It's not the most ideal way to go out, but it does give us a consistent methodology, year after year, where we can make these comparisons with some confidence. Obviously, we do the subpopulation screening. We did it with the app this year, identified folks who are chronically homeless. That number's been tracking somewhere between 26 and 30, so it looks like a few more chronically homeless at 34.8%. Folks with HIV, serious mental illness, physical disabilities, again, all of those can help guide us in where we direct services. And then the victims of domestic violence, another lack of social supports. If you're suffering from domestic violence and have lost your household, the likelihood that you could be in a shelter obviously increases. Next slide, please. Breakdown of sleeping locations, unsurprisingly, parks, 37.6%. That's why the public space management is such a focus for us across all jurisdictions, partnering with law enforcement and code enforcement, making sure those public spaces are there for public, the public to utilize as well, and somewhat trying to, again, minimize the impact across the jurisdictions. Becoming homeless for the first time during the past 12 months, one thing we've experienced challenges on are what's our inflow? How many folks are newly homeless every year that we need to make sure we're focused on providing services. We're seeing 70 people who answered yes. They became homeless for the first time during the past 12 months, and we'll be looking at that number, what led to it. We are engaging now more than ever with people who are experiencing homelessness. So part of our planning process is to have subcommittees with people who are currently experiencing homelessness. In the past, there's been a lot of emphasis on having someone with lived experience. Now we're engaging with people who are living the experience and incorporating some of their feedback on how we should respond to this. Next slide, please. That graph shows income. So of the folks that were counted unsheltered, 205 had no income at all. And then you'll see the varying degrees of income from between $1 to $250 up to over $1,000 a month. Typically, I think on average, we're seeing somewhere around $250 to $500. Makes it very difficult, obviously, to have someone with no income. We have to get our minds around the fact that some of these folks are going to need some type of rental subsidy for the rest of their life. They're just not going to have the means to pay their own rent. Again, we're seeing people that are employed, but a lot of these folks, we can connect them to income through Social Security, which in our current rental environment is not very competitive when you're trying to find a home. A lot of, even our affordable housing developers have restrictions like 2.5 times income. We're looking at what your credit score is. These folks are very difficult to house because of that. And again, why Home Key is such an attractive model for us, because those units are literally restricted to folks experiencing homelessness. So you can't build in the kind of the soft, you need 2.5 times the income to come here, even if it's an affordable housing complex. Next slide. We'll spend just a few minutes here. This is a really important slide, and a lot of energy resources have gone into increasing our sheltering capacity. And I'd also like to point out the impact that COVID had on these numbers. We saw kind of holding steady in the city of Merced, and the city of Merced has 2 navigation centers in them. The very top one you see there, D Street Shelter, has a capacity. At the time it was 45, but they were on COVID lockdown, so they were down to 28. So we lost some beds there, and the B Street Navigation Center had a capacity of 66, so we lost 22 beds there as well. So, when those places are open and not restricted due to a COVID lockdown, we're seeing them at or near capacity. At this point, they've removed all capacity restrictions. The D Street Shelter's up to 55, and the B Street Navigation Center's at 75. So there's a couple of scenarios there, and you can tell that COVID was kind of running rampant the last week there, January. We had 25 folks in our Operation Safe Harbor, which is where we would provide some emergency shelter for folks who are COVID positive and experiencing homelessness. And then you see the array of transitional housing units. So again, overall, we had 487 folks. Those are individuals, not necessarily places that were available. So we had more places available than people in those places, primarily due to COVID. So we're hoping now that it's in this endemic phase, we can start loosening some of our restrictions and really maximize.
Excuse me a second, John.
Yes, sir.
We're just 5 minutes away from 3 o'clock. So how many more slides do you have? I just want to let you know.
This could be the last one.
Oh, perfect.
Yep. So again, just thank you. Just to make sure there's some time for questions, and I do have one other alibi from my earlier introduction about the permanent local housing allocation. That notice of funding availability should be coming out in May. Again, every jurisdiction is eligible for it, and we're looking at there's I went through the guidelines this morning, and there's provisions in those guidelines. The initial plan needs to be submitted by June 30th of 2023 when the allocation was budgeted at the state level. So I know we've talked about the permanent local housing allocation as a resource that all jurisdictions have. There are deadlines associated with that where funding will start to be lost. Also in those same guidelines, it does state that when the NOFA is released, you're only eligible for the prior 2 years funding. So I need some clarification from the state, and I'll bring it back to this body on exactly which provision. I believe the jurisdictions will have till 2023, but I don't want to. I want to make sure you all have good information in which to respond. Overall, the point in time count numbers again are encouraging. I know last year the chair of the COC and I had quite a bit of conversation about what we saw as a very huge spike. To see us reach some stability is encouraging. There's a lot of good people in your communities doing a lot of good work, a lot of great work, a lot of community-based organizations, and better partnership than ever. So pending any questions, I'll make sure you all get a copy of the finalized report once the COC board adopts it. And that should be on April the 7th, I believe. Thank you. Any questions?
Would you mind turning the lights back up, please? Yes, Supervisor Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, thank you for a great job, and I know as a board and with all the support with communities, we're doing as best we can to add more facilities to provide shelter for people. But I know that, I think everybody knows that the times are getting worse with inflation, and as much as people are working, the ones that are working, still not enough. So, and I just want to make sure that, like I said, maybe hopefully the numbers go down, but I just don't see it that way right now. A lot of people, always call me, and I'm pretty sure my colleagues as well, about people being evicted because it's business for people out there, and they just want to evict people so they can increase substantially the rent for a lot of people. So I get calls every day, and unfortunately there's nowhere available to rent. So I just ask that, like I said, if we're able to find more funds, and I know for my colleagues are going to the One Voice program, so whatever funds are out there for grants, whatever we can do to add more space for sheltering, so hopefully that we can provide temporary sheltering, hopefully, or at least not long term, but hopefully whatever we can do to help our community. So thank you.
Hey, any other questions? Yes, Mr. Kale.
Could we go back to slide 10?
Nope. Maybe.
So I guess here's one of my questions, because I'm really unsure of this. If a person is living in an RV, is that considered homeless or not?
It would depend. So there's special occupancy parks where RVs can be hooked up to the appropriate electrical.
Okay.
And if they're just living in an RV on the side of the streets, yes.
Then they are homeless. Okay, that was one of my questions. And maybe I just didn't see it, but on table 5, you didn't, on the same page, table 5 there, it has all the race configurations, but I didn't see Hispanic in that.
That's covered under the ethnicity. Hispanics are going to fall under white.
Oh, they fall under white. Okay. All right. Perfect. That makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Sir.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? No. I do, just point of clarification. So 215 potential units coming. So 90 at the Motel 6. All right, that's in process, an application for a grant, but not approved.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the 21 for the container homes has been approved?
That has been approved. 20 of those will be units for homeless veterans, and one of those will be a manager's unit.
Okay, so that's been awarded. And then what are the other?
The Rescue Missions campus has 10 permanent supportive housing units for veterans.
Okay.
The Child's in B project has 30 units that are set aside in partnership with the Housing Authority, project-based vouchers, and behavioral health, and 65 units with Merced County's application for No Place Like Home.
Okay. All right. And so Childs and Bee's already been funded. No Place Like Home.
That award announcement will be in June.
Okay, so applied. And the mission is awarded or funded.
Ribbon cutting's coming up,
Yep.
soft opening, yes, sir.
Okay. Somebody asked me that question the other day, and I wasn't 100% sure on all of them, so thank you.
Mr. Chair, Director Faria has his hand raised.
Yes, Director Faria, go ahead.
Thank you. And I just, quick comment, thank you very much, John. Of course, we are on conversation to see how much more we can do as we plan for the future. The big challenge is keeping the funds ongoing to keep these successes in place. I congratulate you and commend you on your outstanding work and coordination with cities and the county and all the various entities and all the nonprofits. It's we've made more progress toward handling homelessness in the last year than I've seen in many years. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Faria.
All right, well, thank you, John, for sharing those numbers with us, and congratulations on the relatively good news.
Yeah, thank you.
Right?
Thanks, John.
All right, so we'll close the workshop, and we will call to order the regular meeting of Merced County Association of Governments for March 17th. Would you please call the roll?
Director Aguilar,
Present.
Director Kale,
Here.
Director Espinoza,
Present.
Director Faria,
Here?
Director Hoag, Director McDaniel,
Present.
Director Nagy,
Present.
Director Pedroso,
Here.
Director Serrato,
Here.
Director Silvera, Chair Pereira.
Present.
Thank you, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item B, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll lead us. And then if you would like to please stay standing, we'll have an invocation after that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, I sit down. Would anybody like to do an invocation for us today? Oh, looks like we do.
Fighting the rush. Good afternoon, everybody. If you would, bow your heads. Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, we just love you and praise you. We thank you, Father, for the opportunity to gather. And Father, we just thank you for the good stewardship and the good work that staff and your leaders here at this board are doing in the efforts of homelessness. Father God, we thank you for your word. We thank you for Purim. And we thank you that you are the God of making impossibilities possible through servants like Esther. And we just praise you for all the things that you've done for this community, and we ask you to give insight and discernment to the leaders that are on this board, and encourage staff for the hard work that they have done to put the items together before this board. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Just as a note, at our next meeting, could we have the pledge and the invocation swapped in order, please? I think it'll flow a little better. All right, next item is 5, approval of the agenda. Were there any corrections or additions to the agenda? Oh, I thought that was the minutes. Approval of agenda.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I do have a request to move item 16B, which is the discussion on the SAFE program, to the April board agenda. This was an item that has been developed at the request of Director Hoag, and she notified she would be unable to be here today and would ask if it was at the board's pleasure, we could move that item for discussion next month that would allow her to participate.
Okay.
And then the second is just more of a notification that at your chairs you have updated TRB minutes. There was one item that was expanded upon that we'll talk to at a later date. It was one of the contract authorizations that we'll point out. But the updated minutes to reflect that edit are on your seats and have also been distributed via email. And they're just draft and they're a non-action item.
Okay, and they're the ones that have revised.
Yes, they have a revised, and I believe the change might even be in red, so you can see where that clarification happened.
All right, thank you.
I'll move with those adjustments.
Okay. It's been moved by Director McDaniel. Is there a second?
Second it.
Who seconded it? Okay, Director Aguilar. Okay. All right. Any public comment? Seeing none, we will call for the, oh, yes. Lucky you're quick.
Thank you. I'm here to speak about the SAFE program. No, I'm just kidding. I am getting ready to retire. I'm Daryl Fonseca, City Manager in Dos Palace, and I'm getting ready to retire. And I just wanted to thank all of you and your predecessors for all the help and support you've given Dos Palace through the years. And to me personally, I've learned a lot from all of you. And believe it or not, every one of you have taught me something. So I wanted to thank you for that, and I appreciate it. You know, we've been through some crises together. We had the water crisis, and you guys came through and helped us. You brought water to us. You helped us find solutions, funding different ways, street programs. We got Measure V passed, you know, with a lot of things we did. I always think back to the help that Jess Brown and the MCAG did to help us find money to reconstruct Blossom Street. So you did a lot for us. I appreciate it. You did a lot for me. Thank you very much. And don't forget Dos Palace. Thank you.
Thanks, Daryl.
Okay, any other public comment?
Mr. Chair, before Mr. Fonseca leaves, I want to thank him personally for all the time that he gave the city of Dos Palos, and also part of Merced County. Like he stated, all that was accomplished during his term in Merced County. So thank you for all your service, and also to your brother. So he's been in Livingston for a long time. So thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment? There's none. Is there any on Zoom? Oh, we still got a. Oh my gosh. Excuse me. Thank you for that. Could you please call the roll on our motion?
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Kale,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Faria,
Yes. Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye.
Director Nagy,
Aye.
Director Pedroso,
Yes.
Director Serrato,
Yes.
Chair Pereira.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Now we'll move to public comment. Are there any online? Okay. Anybody else in the room? Okay, we'll close public comment. We'll move to item 7, which is the Caltrans report. Do we have Caltrans on Zoom? Or someone from Caltrans?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Marlon's coming online.
All right. Well, hello, Marlon.
Mr. Chair, hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, we hear you well. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the board. Thank you, Madam Director. I'll give some brief Caltrans updates for the board today. Dennis gives his regards as well. I want to start off with some projects that we have going on in the county, starting with in Hillmar, we have a hawk signal, which is a pedestrian crosswalk beacon. That has recently been completed on Route 165 at Lander Avenue and at Echo Street in that intersection of City of Hillmar. We're asking motorists to obey and be mindful of all the new traffic signals on 165 at this location, as this is going to be hopefully used by the adjacent elementary school, Elam Elementary School and Hillmar High School, and also local residents. So please be on the lookout for that. And if there's any questions regarding the new hawk signal on 165, please do let us know. We're really looking for any feedback that you may have on that. I do want to announce, and some of you may have heard, our Clean California local grant program, Caltrans. We just announced last week that $296 million of Clean California grants will be funding underserved communities across the state. We in Caltrans District 10, we received 6 projects, particularly in Stanislaus, Merced County and Tuolumne counties, primarily to remove trash, create jobs, and engage residents in transforming public spaces. So the project that we are happy that we received funding for in Merced County is Winton Community Park restoration. And that includes a new walking path with energy efficient lighting, new picnic shelters, and a playground, and public art in the form of iron benches designed and welded by local high school students who will also plant trees as part of the project. And lights will be installed at the park at the baseball field to extend hours of use. Dugouts will be constructed to replace the old ones, and also a new soccer field will be regraded, and there will be lights installed there to return it to recreational use. We'll also have lighting on the basketball courts as well. There were some graffiti and scarred picnic tables that will be replaced as well, and also we'll be holding a community cleanup day at the park to help remove graffiti and approximately 140 tons of waste and litter. So these are all good things that we're going to be seeing in the park. And in total, District 10 received $8 million in grants across the 3 counties, and we're very happy about this. This project will be completed at as late as June 30th of 2024, but in general, we're very happy with the investment the state's making in Merced County. We hope to see future improvements like this with the local California grant program for Clean California. So if you'd like further information, I'm happy to share more, but I just wanted to share that with the board today. Very excited about that. We also just briefly want to mention, and I know there were a couple of concerns mentioned at the recent, the last MCAG board meeting, particularly Director Espinosa and Director Silvera regarding State Route 33. I know we're planning to meet with MCAG to discuss what we can do in the areas of Centinela and Henry Miller based on the director's concerns. So I appreciate that feedback. And we are also going to be meeting with, once new Caltrans Sustainability Climate Manager is on board, we plan to meet with that individual as well to talk about funding for ZEV projects and also the coordination that we can do with our Air Resources Board for innovation in this area. So I just wanted to share that with the board. Those are the comments and reports that I have for today. I'll pass it back to the board if there's any thoughts, questions, concerns. Happy to have them, and thanks for the time.
All right, well, thank you for that. This is Lloyd Pereira, and of course Winton Park is in my district, and the folks in Winton are extremely excited. We had done a walkable Winton study there, probably 3-4 years ago now, and everybody keeps asking, well, what about, what about? And so it was just wonderful to be able to share that information with the community. And we had a municipal advisory council meeting last night, and man, people clapped and cheered. So let the folks know that made the decision. Thank you, and we really appreciate that. Okay, anybody else have questions? Yes, Supervisor Espinoza.
I was going to talk. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I want to congratulate Supervisor Pereira, and also thank you for that grant for Winton as well. So it's still Merced County, and I'm glad that is that part of Merced County is getting another grant. So thank you. And also the Hawk system in Hillmar. But don't forget about my Hawk system in Highway 140 as well, Marion. So please, if whenever I could get an update, send me an email, please. Thank you. Oh, you know what? Another one is northbound 99. I was coming northbound in Merced, and I saw the split when you guys barely had the split on both lanes in northbound 99 coming into Merced, and I would say the left side split is very, very dangerous. As you're driving through the split, I see those barricades in the center dividers pretty close to the lane, so I think it's very dangerous, and there's well, I don't, like I said, I don't know the safety standards, but in regards to reflective being put on those barriers is probably needed, because probably during the evening there's gonna be accidents. So just not trying to do your job, just trying to prevent it. So thank you.
Mr. Director, if I may, I will have our team reach out to you for an update regarding Planada signal as well. And thanks for noting the 99 concerns. We'll pass that along to our project management team. Appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Marlon, I have one more. So last year, well, maybe a year and a half ago, I had asked for North Highway 59 shoulder to be redressed. And you know, and Caltrans's crew came out, but they only went about as far as Oakdale Road. And the need, you know, the need is all the way really to Snelling. And there's some spots that the shoulder is over a foot from the, you know, the bottom of the hole to the top of the asphalt. And so, you know, we're coming into what will be, you know, boating season, and a lot of people are going up to the lakes. And so anyway, so just like to raise that again, if you wouldn't mind passing that along.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, was that just in one direction or both directions towards Snelling?
So, yeah, so, you know, unfortunately, it's not everywhere, right? But, yeah, there are some spots, both northbound and southbound.
Okay.
But the one spot that's real bad is on the northbound side.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, and appreciate you being here. All right, okay, we'll move to item 8, which is our Citizens Advisory Committee report, and we have with us Mr. Jackson. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. There were 2 items that the Citizens Advisory Committee reviewed and recommended, and the first one was authorize the executive director to enter into 3-year construction contract for bus shelter repairs, removal, and installation in an amount not to exceed $570,000. That recommendation was unanimously approved. The next item and last is to adopt the 2022 One Voice legislation platform. That item was unanimously recommended. And that's all that I have, unless you have questions or comments.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Jackson? Nope. Well, thank you for coming this afternoon and giving us that report.
Thank you.
You know, Mr. Jackson, and I don't know if anybody ever does, but at your next meeting, could you let the committee know that we appreciate them and what they do for us?
I certainly will.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. All right. We will move to item 9, which are informational items. And as you know, these are all in your packet. And but if you do have questions on any of the items, you're more than welcome to ask.
And just a reminder that the updated revised TRB minutes replace item 9A3.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll move to item 10, which is our consent calendar. All consent calendar items listed below may be acted upon with one vote unless specifically removed for separate consideration by a board member, a member of staff, or a member of the public. But just because we're going to do them all at once, if you just want to make a comment, right, to highlight something, you're more than welcome to do that without actually pulling the item.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir?
I would like to pull a III for separate consideration.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the others?
I'll move to approve all others but that one.
Okay.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Director McDaniel, seconded by Director Nagy. Is there any public comment or do I have to do it each vote, or since we're Zoom, I don't? Okay. All right. Is there any public comment at this time? Is there any, and none online? Okay. Well, thank you. We'll close public comment. Any director questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director McDaniel,
Aye. Aye.
Director Nagy,
Aye.
Director Pedroza,
Yes.
Director Serrato,
Yes.
Chair Pereira.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you for that, Joy. We'll move to item 10A, 3 ayes. Director McDaniel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason I pulled this one is because in AB 361, it clearly states as an emergency, and I don't feel like this is an emergency anymore. So I just wanted to have separate consideration before we move on. It seems like we're kind of acting like a bureaucracy and just okaying things to okay them for the convenience. And I like this one to be a separate consideration.
Okay. All right. What's the pleasure of the board? It can die for if you don't want to do it, it can die for a lack of a motion. Although if you want it to continue, you're welcome to make a motion.
Just for clarification, this could, if this is the blanket authority, it will affect the ability for any of the CAC that continues to meet in a hybrid form. The TRB is returned in person without a hybrid option, but they could act separate if this was something that was just specific to the board. The CAC could meet to allow them to continue to meet in that way, or this could be acted on as a blanket for all agency committees. So there's a secondary kind of consideration on the direction that I'll ask for, just so that we are compliant with whatever the outcome is.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Director Nagy.
Well, I agree, but it's not our stated state of emergency. It's the state's stated state of emergency. So whether we okay this or not, it's still up to the states, at the state level, the governor's level, to declare that state of emergency, and he hasn't declared it over with. And this is just the thing that you have to do every month redundantly so that you can still have the option to do, so that Mayor Faria, for instance, can meet remotely and not have to post, the minutes and, agendize it, that anybody that wants can go to wherever he is, and that kind, like we used to have to do. So,
okay.
Anyway.
Just real, I tend to agree with Pat's perspective. I think, the state, obviously, we're still under a state of emergency statewide. And for us, practically speaking, it just enables us the option of, when it comes down to it, right? It enables us the option of eventually, if possible. Fairly can be. No, I think we're still under a state of emergency. I mean, I think if you want to make a political point one or another, I think that's one thing. But I think, at the end of the day, we're still under a state of emergency. The pandemic's killed over 1 million people in the United States, and it's still out there. And, but also too, it enables that, which, for folks who have other jobs, I'm here, but it's an added convenience.
Okay. Well, so it either dies for a lack of a motion, or one of you two make a motion, I guess.
I'll move to approve.
All right. Okay, so it's been moved by Director Nagy, seconded by Director Serrato. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any other comments? Please call the roll.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Kale.
No.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
No.
Thank you. Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Faria,
Yes.
Yeah.
Director McDaniel,
No.
Director Nagy,
Yes.
Director Pedroza,
Yes.
Director Serrato,
Yes.
Chair Pereira.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And then just because we've approved that resolution doesn't mean we have to offer it. It just does make it available. Okay, we'll move on to our next item, which is Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County. This is item 11. We do have an action item. And I will turn it over to Christine Chavez, and welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, directors. The item before you is the authorization for the executive director to enter into a 3-year construction contract for bus shelter repairs, removal, installation in an amount not to exceed $570,000. We released an invitation for bids in January of 2022 for the repair, removal, and installation for up to 45 bus shelters. These are the same bus shelters we purchased last summer. We had a few questions asked, but we only had one bidder, and it was Lawrence Backhoe from Atwater, California. And they bid on a base price form to give us kind of the options of what they would cost, or give us the, to establish a low bid, but essentially providing the cost for the shelter installation. We've been working with each of the jurisdictions to start strategizing the installation of these shelters. So we're going to do them in 2 phases. The first is going to consist of 29 shelters, which we've met with each of your jurisdictions to identify locations, and they're indicated on page 79. We'll be going around to the jurisdictions and confirming those locations prior to installation, and we anticipate that phase to take 6 months. Beyond that, we have an additional 16 shelters that we would be installing. I'm sorry, 19 shelters that we would be no, 16, I was right the first time, sorry. 29 and 16, that we would be installing based on some feedback that we received from the short range transit plan, and to help us determine kind of what the best locations are based on our revised network. So phase 1, construction costs, we have some funding set aside in the budget, or we had some funding approved in this year's budget, and it would cost $350,000, and phase 2 would be $220,000, for a total amount not to exceed $570,000 over 3 years for this construction contract. I'm trying to figure out. So we have $220 budgeted in this fiscal, or sorry, $220 that will need to be budgeted over the next 2 fiscal years, and we have $350 approved in this year's budget. So that concludes my presentation, and seeking your approval for the contract to get started on those installations.
Okay. Any questions of Christine?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Any of these in Atwater?
Yes.
Are they going to be painted Atwater High School blue?
If that's the same color as the bus blue, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it is. All right, great, thanks. Just a question.
I think Buhat Colony actually got ahead of you on that one.
Good question.
Yeah, great question. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Director McDaniel and seconded by Director Kale, as long as they're blue. And all right, is there any public comment at this time? And none on Zoom? Okay, we'll close public comment. Please call the roll.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza? Yes. Director Faria?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Aye.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
Chair Pereira?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, well, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move to Merced County Regional Waste Management Authority. We do have an action item, which is to authorize the executive director to enter into a contract, a construction contract for Highway 59 Cell 6B-2 and Billy Wright Cell 2C landfill liner expansion, and authorize the fiscal year 21-22 budget amendments correspondingly. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry. My youngest son got his braces off yesterday, so we made the final payment, so maybe I'm just a little bit excited. Item 13A is an action item that comes before you to authorize the executive director to enter into a construction contract for the Highway 59 landfill cell 6B2 and the Billy Wright landfill cell 2C liner expansions. 2 liner expansions, 2 facilities. This action also is to authorize fiscal year 21-22 budget amendments within the Capital Improvement Project Fund. As many as you know, as more waste is brought into both of the landfill sites, less airspace is available. And so the authority constantly has to gauge the flow of material to the airspace that's remaining in the cells. And so we generally will program a cell expansion anywhere from 3 to 6 years. At the Highway 59 landfill, the authority is currently placing waste materials in landfill cell 6B1. So this action item is for a cell expansion of 6B2. The cell 6B1 as of December 30th of 2021 had a net remaining airspace of 1,291,710 cubic yards. This amounts to this cell reaching its capacity in spring of 2024. At the Billy Wright landfill, the authority is currently placing waste materials in cell 2B, which the action item before you is for a cell 2C. As of December 30th of 2021, the net remaining airspace of cell 2B, the existing cell, is 581,672 cubic yards, which puts us at summer of 2023 for the existing cell to be full. Because of this, we are requiring the successful bidder to construct the Billy Wright cell 2C first, so they will begin work once an action is made on this project for them to construct that first. The engineer's estimate for this project, this was a big win. The engineer's estimate was $12.6 million. On January, that's not the win. I will tell you what the win is. On January 25th of 2022, the authority released an invitation for bids for the construction of 2 cell liner expansions. The authority received a total of 7 bids. In your monthly report, you'll actually have a picture of when those bidders came out to our site. But we received 7 bids. Woods Brothers was the lowest bidder. Woods Brothers is also a contractor that has performed and constructed a cell at the Billy Wright landfill already for this authority as well. The lowest bid of Wood Brothers was for a bid amount of $9,478,324.85. To set the total construction cost of the Highway 59 landfill cell 6B2 liner expansion proposed by Wood Brothers is estimated at $5,210,896.30. The total construction cost for the Billy Wright landfill cell 2C liner expansion proposed by Wood Brothers is estimated at $4,267,428.55. This contract is going to be executed with for the low bid amount of $9,478,325.00. The remainder of the funds, $947,832.00, will be available to the executive director for change orders as needed, as is allowed under the agency's purchasing policy. Please note that the Technical Review Board, they gave us an action which recommended to separate out the contract amount from the 10% change order budget in the action today and moving forward in subsequent actions in the future. Therefore, staff is seeking board authorization to execute a contract with Wood Brothers, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $9,478,325.00 with a maximum contract budget authority of $10,426,157.00. Staff finds that there is sufficient budget authority under the Capital Improvement Project Fund to construct both projects. However, funds from one capital project will need to be moved to another for budgeting purposes. Staff is therefore recommending the fiscal year 21-22 budget amendment authorized under this action. In summary, staff hereby requests the board to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with Wood Brothers, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $9,478,325.00 with a maximum contract budget authority of $10,426,157.00 and to authorize a budget amendment to fiscal year 21-22 budget to transfer $759,578 from Capital Improvement Project budget number 80055 to CIP project number 80062, and my last and to transfer $300,074 from Capital Improvement Project number 80036 to Capital Improvement Project 80062. That concludes my staff report. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Well, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Zetz? No questions. What's the pleasure of the board? No, just one at a time. Okay. Thank you.
Second.
I thought I was going to have to second it myself. All right, been moved by Director Nagy, seconded by Director Pedroso. I'll open up now for public comment. There's none in the House and there's none online. I'll close public comment. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Aye.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
Chair Pereira?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, well, congratulations. Could I ask just a quick question? Where is Wood Brothers located?
Lemoore.
Lemoore, thank you. All right, we will now move to Merced County Association of Governments, item 15. These are action items to be considered separately. So we have Mary Michael Rawlings first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Glad to be here with you today. The item before you is an action item to adopt the proposed 2022 One Voice legislative platform. These items were put forward by the jurisdictions, and we did conduct 4 planning sessions with the TRB, and subsequently the policy forms from each jurisdiction were collected, and from that we put together the draft platform that you see on page 120 of your packet. The policies are divided up into kind of 6 general categories: transportation, public safety, homelessness and housing, water, utility infrastructure, and recreational facilities. The fact sheets that have been developed by the jurisdiction that support these policies that I've received so far are also in your packet for review, as are the list of delegates that have been submitted by the jurisdictions. The platform was recommended by both the TRB and Citizens Advisory Committee for approval. However, there were some comments made by the CAC that are listed in the highlights of the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting that is in your packet under item 8. So just to bring a couple of those to your attention, and those are just continuing. We have a member that just continues to feel strongly about a representative of the CAC that should be included in the delegation and the trip to DC. Another member who continues to feel strongly about including the preservation of agricultural land in the platform. And we have advised that member to see their jurisdictional representatives for inclusion in future One Voice platforms. And then another comment by a CC member that was kind of disappointed that some of the policies that were identified only benefited one jurisdiction, and really felt like the TRB should have promoted more policies that benefited the region as a whole. So those were just some comments that were made, but they did, like I said, recommend adoption of the platform you have in front of you today. So excited to go to DC. We'll use this as a guiding document as the delegation commences their meetings next week, not next week, the 29th, Tuesday the 29th, prior to going to DC. So happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
All right, are there any questions for Mary Michael? I see no questions from the board. Do we have any questions or comments from the Executive Director, Stacy Guzman, who's sitting to my left?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to share one quick comment. Mary Michael and I briefly talked about it this morning, and we'll continue the discussion with the TRB. But an elected official from one of the jurisdictions was chatting with me this morning and made a recommendation for jurisdictions to consider identifying an elected alternate, not to add to your delegation, but to have an identified alternate in the event we are in still COVID season. One of your elected delegates on the trip were to not be able to ultimately travel, that delegate can be built into the security clearances and some of the other things that have to be done that would prohibit someone from jumping in at the last minute. So this is a brand new concept. It literally started this morning. I took that phone call. I in a passing mentioned it to Mary Michael. We'll continue that conversation with the TRB, but your TRB members may come back to you with that recommendation. I think it's a very smart one because of the COVID possibility and implications, along with just life happening in general. That is up to the jurisdiction to
them with a recommendation.
the jurisdictions can make that decision of whether or not you'd like to do it, but just know we'll continue that discussion at your at the TRB level, and if you'd like to take that approach to have that kind of backup in the event someone couldn't attend, we'll be happy to get that facilitated through our security clearance process when we start that.
What's the time frame in which that needs to be decided?
We usually begin, well, if there's any concern, we would encourage there's no answer here. It's the security clearances usually start a few weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, once we kind of have that conversation started. So we'll confirm that with Townsend when we would need to know. The encouragement to do it sooner rather than later is if you want that alternate to be participating or listening into the discussions at the delegate meetings. If we can prepare them if they have to come in cold, but that would be the only time sensitivity, but it's definitely not necessary. We'll get with Townsend to get an idea of when those security clearance forms will have to be due. We haven't started that process yet.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
So we can approve it, and then the jurisdictions which is add the amended, right, with their whoever they're requesting as a
does not change the action today.
Oh, okay. So if not, then I'll move to approve that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
It has been moved by Director Espinoza. Been seconded by Director Aguiar. All right. Open it up for public comment. No public comment? All right. Thank you. We'll close public comment. And would you please call the roll?
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Aye.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
Chair Pereira?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move to item 15B, recommended approval of REAP 1 funding allocation funding table. Stacy Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is a proposed funding allocation table for MCAG and / the regions, full allocation of REAP 1 funds. REAP 1 funds, we have $1 million that came as our formula share from a $20 million award to the San Joaquin Valley as part of the governor's strategies to help jurisdictions prepare for ramping up housing production. We have had a number of items over the last year that the board has authorized the use of these funds. We are currently in the process of the RENA methodology and implementation plan. There's staff time. There's other uses that have been discussed. But as we've prepared our reporting to HCD through our fiscal agent, Fresno COG, HCD has asked that before the final allocation of funds to the Valley is released, they want to see each county or each COG's full funding table for how you intend to use the whole amount. So the table that is on page 167, it summarizes both what the board has already authorized. For example, the first category, RENA and administration, the Cascadia contract of $126,000, that's already underway. The legislation allows for, or the program guidelines allows for the 5% for overall administration. That's for our financing, our finance and accounting and reporting and all of the things we have to do. And then it also allows for additional funding that's not specified with a cap for overall program management, which is the staff time for the REAP work group that we have, for the research, the development of procurements, all of the kind of legwork that is going in on the staff side is represented there. It also then, in the red box, is really the heart of what's being proposed. It's the remainder of that $1 million award. And if you recall, sometime early in this process, the technical work group that is working on the REAP recommendations, which is all the jurisdiction staff, and the TRB and this body supported not doing direct sub-allocations to jurisdictions and instead pulling the resources together and doing regional strategies that will help all jurisdictions. It's a little bit of a unique approach, but that's been the path we've been going. What we need to do now is specifically identify the work products that those funds will pay for over the next year. So in the red box, you'll see that what's being proposed is an infrastructure capacity assessment. That's a key part before your jurisdictions can begin to do your housing elements, is you need an understanding of what your infrastructure capacity is for new development. There's a workshop we'll actually be doing this workshop next week. That is under the multi-jurisdictional housing element. It's a workshop on educating jurisdictions on the decision between doing individual housing elements or multi-jurisdictional housing element with all of the participating jurisdictions. The Regional Housing Trust Fund Implementation Plan, that's a plan that would look at developing a trust fund where jurisdictions can pool their resources to promote and to develop affordable housing and I believe actually housing in general. And this plan would explore that framework of how it would work, how it would be funded, how it would be administered, the implications, that kind of thing. And then lastly is the multi-jurisdictional housing element. That is really a multi-jurisdictional housing element or 7 individual housing elements. So the way that these numbers are dedicated, and this has all been developed and has been recommended by both the work group and the TRB, is anything in these estimates that are lined out for the infrastructure assessment and the trust fund implementation plan, those are estimates. Anything that is left over as those things were to be pursued, those dollars would roll into that housing element item because we know there is not enough money to do either 7 individual housing elements or a multi-jurisdictional housing element, which means any money that is left over after these other actions will be applied to the cost of those housing elements. So anything that is overestimated here will roll down into the housing element total. So at this time, the action is to request an approval of the uses of funds and the major buckets, and then understanding that these estimates may shift a little bit. You know, the capacity assessment might be 250, and so that extra 50,000 might move down into another item, but combined, they would stay within that total of $785,196. So.
Okay. Are there any questions of Stacy? No? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair.
Oh.
Director Freya has his hand.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Director Freya, go ahead.
Sorry I couldn't come over today. I have something this evening I have to be back and forth in time. Last night we had our housing workshop in Los Banos. And some of you may have seen that Los Banos was actually on TV regarding the housing, the growth in housing and the need for housing. The Bay Area is pushing. They're looking at the entire, from Sacramento to Fresno as a mega region being influenced by the Bay Area. Of course, Los Banos has felt this for many years. And right now the push is on again. So many jobs get created in the Bay Area. So any way that we can, one of the things we find really short of is those lower income, multifamily, low moderate. There's plenty of moderate housing getting built. Apparently the developers seem to be, that seems to be the best for them. So whatever we can do to incentivize, the way we can use programs to incentivize the building of or a low moderate income housing, Los Banos is very much appreciated. Love to be a part of those conversations.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? Okay, item dies for lack of a motion. We'll move on to 15C.
I'm sorry, we did have a public comment. I don't know if,
Oh.
if you wanted.
Yeah, we'll take a public comment. They're all asleep today.
I know. I'm like
Good afternoon. My name is Shang Zhang with Leadership Council, and I just wanted to ask about the time frame of the Regional Housing Trust Fund. Is it within the time of the REAP grant, or does it have its own timeline with an RFQ process, or what is expected?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that question. This Regional Housing Trust Fund would be solely funded by the REAP allocation. So the expectation is that it would be completed within the time frame of the program, which I believe the expenditure deadline is in the summer of 2023. So this would be the first step of getting that board authorization to pursue.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question, with the consultant, would there be a committee to work on that? As you mentioned, the framework would include, how the trust fund works, how it would be funded. That would all have to be completed within the summer of 2023.
This is Chair Pereira. Could I suggest that offline you give our executive director a call if you want to have a dialogue? Basically, public comment is more for you to make your comment to us rather than a dialogue. Would that be fine with you?
Yes, it would.
All right, thanks.
That's Sheng, right? Okay, great. Just want to confirm. I'll reach out and we can have this discussion.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Anybody interested in reconsidering whether we get a motion or not?
I'll move to approve.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Nagy, a second by Director McDaniel. All right. Would you please call the roll?
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Aye.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
Chair Pereira?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Here we'll move to item 15C, which is to form a Highway 99 subcommittee, develop a regional engagement strategy for multimodal investments. Turn it over to Stacy Guzman.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay.
Like with the modification that Director Nagy's in charge.
Does that motion include the staff discussion on the committee composition in the staff report? It identifies board members.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sure. We have a motion by Director Nagy, second by Director McDaniel. Any questions by the board? Nope. Okay, we'll open it up for public comment. I see none in the House. Is there any online? None online. We'll close public comment. Please call the roll.
Director Aguilar?
No.
Director Kale?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
Yes.
Director Faria?
Yes.
Director McDaniel?
Aye.
Director Nagy?
Aye.
Director Pedroso?
Yes.
Director Serrato?
Yes.
Chair Pereira?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move to item 16. These are all discussion items. We will, the first one is the draft overall work program budget for 2023. This will be presented by Nav Bagri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon,
welcome,
directors. It's that time of the year, talk about budgets. We're going to be talking about, as you know, you guys do a lot for MCAG, not only the transportation planning, but the bus, regional waste, and other programs like Measure V, GIS, SAFE. But today what we're going to be talking about is the transportation planning department. First, the completion task for 21-22. Staff completed unmet unmet transit needs process and reporting. We also processed the FTIP and amendments, Measure V implementation plan, amendment to the transportation expenditure plan, and completed 2 transit studies, the short range transit plan, and actually the short range transit plan should be completed by end of this fiscal year, and then the YARTS strategic plan. The transportation department has a lot of mandated work. They administer funds for like CMAC, RSTP, LTF, and LPP funds, which is local partnership programs. The transportation department also leads in regional planning for like the RTP, unmet transit needs, air quality conforming planning, transportation modeling, GIS, and regional coordination for valley, state, and federal for good movements, rail, and air quality. So just a budget summary for fiscal year 22-23. There's going to be 3 new studies for 22-23. There's going to be a couple of studies that are completed in the 22-23. One of the things that we added to this transportation budget this year is the housing planning budget under the MPO. Under this budget, we're also including a 3% COLA. We're also including 3 new positions. One is the planner, which will help address the planning department for will help with traffic modeling and also housing elements. Another position we'll be looking to fill is accounting tech and admin assistant. These 2 positions will be allocated, the workload will be allocated amongst the MPO, RWA, YARTS, and TJPA. Major projects for 22-23. We're going to be completing or starting the FTIP, Federal Transportation Improvement Program. Also 2 studies, the electric vehicle charging station studies, which will identify charging stations in each jurisdictions. Non-motorized transportation plans, which we'll be looking at bike, ped, and through each jurisdiction. If we're successful in spending down our planning dollars, we'll be starting a sustainable community formula grant, which we'll be looking at our SES and how we can improve throughout the jurisdictions. Also, the planning studies that will conclude in fiscal year 22-23, the RTP, which will conclude hopefully July or August, and then the RENA, which will probably conclude in the June of 2023. Just continue on work for Measure V, the implementation plan, check in with the jurisdictions, the annual audit, the reports, and the sales tax reports. The planning revenues for the MPO, you have basically the metropolitan planning, which we call PL, from the Federal Highway Administrations, and then 5303, which is from the Federal Transportation Administration. What combine those 2, we call them Consolidated Planning Grants, or CPGs. We also are going to have the SB1 funds, and then Planning, Programming, and Monitoring funds, which is the PPM money. All this work has to be submitted to Caltrans. We submitted it on March 1st for review. We'll get feedback, make those corrections, and then hopefully we'll submit it for the final draft in May. So the revenues. Our revenues increased by $670,000. Noticeably, if you look at the 3rd funding source, the housing plan, it went from $192 to $1 million. And then the new funding stream of the SB1 planning grant, $197,000, plus that PPM money I was talking about, the planning, programming, and monitoring of $218,000. And then expenditures. At the same token, our expenditures increased by $670,000. Salaries, which includes the COLAs, the 3 new positions, and potential merit increases. Also, as I talked about, the EV study, the non-motorized study plan, and the SB1 grant. That concludes the presentation. Sorry. I got kids that have braces, so I haven't paid them off yet.
Okay. Any questions of Nav?
So the next step, I will bring in a final OWP draft next month to this board.
And then I do have one question on the cost of living.
Yes.
Is that a COLA?
Yes.
I mean, it came out at 3.0 even.
So I do have how we determined our 3%. My clicker stopped working. So it's the last slide. Is that the last slide? Oh, okay, good. So what we did was we took the CPI, we took the last 5 years of what we've given out, MCAG has given out COLAs versus the inflation by different regions. So we have Western region, San Francisco, and Hayward. And as you can see, after 5 years, the Western region is at 15%, Oakland, Hayward at 15.3. And what we did was we took an average. So it came out to 15.5. But if you look at the escalation of what we've given out COLAs over the last 5 years, it was only at 12%. So that's how we came up to 3%. Okay. I mean, it's a little more than 3%, but it's easier to do a 3% than besides the 3.3%.
Right. But isn't the COLA a number given to us by the state?
No, not to us.
I thought that somebody, doesn't the state provide for a COLA each year? No?
No.
Okay. Well, maybe it's just for school districts and
Social Security and
yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for explaining that.
Thank you, sir.
I just have one question. You said you submitted it in March 1st?
Yes.
And you're expecting Caltrans to reply in May?
No, we got to submit it back to them in May.
Oh, okay.
So it actually goes to FHWA, and they have to, if they don't give us back the comments, then we can't submit it by May 15th, and that's on them then.
Okay.
I hope Martin's listening. Thank you.
All right. Okay, we will move to item C, which is the California Transportation Assessment. Stacy Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an item that, it's not typical that I would bring an item like this to the board because it is just a bit of a dense information item, but this item, Assembly Bill 285, has gotten quite a bit of traction at the Valley and statewide levels, and so I want to have it on your radar because of the concerning implications. So AB 285 directed the Strategic Growth Council to assess transportation planning and funding activities at the state and regional levels, really looking at how to align funding programs to assist the state in achieving its climate goals. So as you know, California has adopted some pretty ambitious goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and is not on track to meet those goals. So as part of this ongoing dialogue as to the why, the state legislature in 2019 passed AB 285, and it required that the Strategic Growth Council submit a report to the legislature that looked at the gaps and the alignments between the visions and the goals that are put forth in kind of the state policies, and also the transportation plans that we do, and what kinds of projects are actually being built, maintained, and operated. So they were basically trying to find the disconnect between how the current GHG reduction policies and plans, how they're not resulting in the desired outcomes that were intended. So that's great because it's really, okay, what we're doing isn't working, so let's look at why. That's the premise. And so the Strategic Growth Council worked and contracted with the University of California Institute for Transportation Studies, it's the UCITS, to do this California Transportation Assessment. And that report, it was a series of 5 white papers and then a final report, was submitted to SGC, and then SGC turned around and presented that or released that to the legislature in the last part of February. So why I'm bringing this up is that the development of this report, while COGs across the state, or MPOs, which is just the federal designation for a state planning agency, were interviewed as part of this process early on. It went dark after that, and then this report appeared, and this report has some pretty concerning findings, and I think there are some concerning implications to how MCAG could potentially be put in a position to operate or interact with our local jurisdictions. So I wanted to just make sure that this was on your radar. So as you see in the staff report, I included all of the findings, but I want to just specifically highlight 3. One of them is that a finding was that the California MPOs have more responsibility than comparable MPOs in the state. So MPOs, just another acronym for MCAG, and there are 17 others in the state. So we have this added responsibility in California that other MPOs in other states don't have, but it's not matched with sufficient resources or authority. So our plans that we do are aspirational. That was one finding as to why they aren't moving the marker on GHG reduction. The second I want to point out is a finding that stated at the regional level, most MPOs continue to devote the bulk of their total spending toward auto investments, including capacity expansion and road operations and maintenance. Third point I want to mention is a finding that local option, or basically sales tax measures for transportation, have become a major source of funding for transportation in California, reducing the ability of state and regional agencies to steer investments and outcomes, because those funding determinations are made at the voter level as opposed to at this level. So of those three findings translated into a handful of solutions that were in the report, and two of them I'll highlight that are concerning. Review and update, so the proposed solution, review and update the roles of transportation organizations at the state, regional, and local levels. The subtext there is discussion about potentially consolidating MPOs, or, there's been a lot of talk over the years about, does the Valley need 8 MPOs, or can they have sub-regional MPOs? So there's this conversation about restructuring how MPOs and regional governance works. And then the second point is, though, kind of a second, if we do restructure, even if we don't, about giving MPOs additional authority to accomplish the goals that California expects of them. I go through quite a bit on the concerning part, but why this is kind of raising flags for MPOs in the state and in the Valley, and is that we have to do, under SB 375, the regional transportation plan, and then we have to do a land use plan called the Sustainable Community Strategy. That has to be in compliant or consistent with the general plans for your jurisdictions and also the RENA. And the report acknowledges that under SB 375, COGS or MPOs are provided this responsibility, but it's a mismatch with the responsibility, or it's inadequate authority to carry out and have any real impact on the land use side. And that's been well known. We don't have land use authority, but we're asked to do these planning documents that have implications for land use. So, but further, I want to, I think that where it got a little concerning is that the report goes further to actually suggest that MPOs have more authority over some land use decisions, and to tie compliance with the RTP-SES to state and regional funding eligibility. So now it's no longer the planning exercise of the RTP-SES. It actually would tie your jurisdictional funding eligibility for projects to whether or not you're complying with the RTP-SES. So there's a couple of bullets here that talk about directly linking the receipt of state and MPO directed funds for transportation, housing, and other planning efforts to SB 375 and supported actions, to tracking RTP-SES progress with consequences when going off track, imposing consequences for getting off of track, similar to air quality conformity requirements that can essentially shut down projects, and then also to require MPOs to monitor SES compliance to publicly identify localities whose land use policies do not conform with SES performance goals, such as increased density and parking deregulation. So you can see there's also a conversation around making sure there are adequate mechanisms to be constantly reviewing pipeline projects. So think of projects like Campus Parkway, AME, the 99 projects that take years and years to develop, to have markers in your progress where you re-examine those pipeline projects to make sure they're still aligning with the changing state goals. There's implications there as well. So you can see this was a little alarming because it got delivered, and we read it and thought, okay, we need to have this discussion. It's happening at the Valley level. It's not all bad. It just happened at a top-down way that caught us off guard, and there are real implications that need real discussion. So the report is out on the street. It's not a formal comment period, but at the Valley-wide level, we're talking about how to respond to some of these concerns and work with some of the implications. And then also at the CalCog level, Director Pedroso was part of the legislative meeting that occurred on this topic. There's a lot of interest to also be engaging in this discussion at the CalCog level. But because of this is going to largely become a much bigger discussion. I wanted there to be a fundamental understanding of what these concerns are, and also because I want to be able to engage with our Valley colleagues and our state colleagues in responding to them appropriately. So there is a link. I can get you all of the reports if you want to read them. I did include the main report, but there are 5 more in-depth white papers that kind of led up to this final report. So this is for your information. I'm happy to answer as many questions if you have any, but this was just for information purposes.
Are there any questions? Yes, Director Nagy.
Well, mine really isn't a question. It's you should set back 4 words. Goals are not realistic. The state is just lovely in setting all these goals that are unattainable. Whether it has to do with greenhouse gases, organic waste, you name it. You name it, you can go right on down the list. They mandate all this stuff to be done. They don't fund it. And then when it doesn't happen, they fine you. They penalize you. What little bit of funding you're getting, they take it away. Well, it's counterproductive. If you ask any person that deals with people and set goal settings, the number one thing they tell you is goals have to be attainable. So that the state needs to know that and not come out with these pie in the sky that, oh, we want to go back to, you know, the 1800s level of air purity in 3 weeks. That's the type of things that they come out with, and it's not, nobody can do it. But then they don't take blame for their own self for having an unattainable system. They place the blame on all the jurisdictions. And that, in my opinion, is just wrong. So I've said my piece.
Director Nagy for Assembly. Okay, anyone else? Yeah.
I could do it in 2 words, but.
7 letters. All right, we'll move to item D, which is the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council Regional Policy Conference, sorry. Stacy Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one's a lot quicker and easier. Finally, after a couple years hiatus, the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council is organizing the Valley Policy Conference. It will be May 11th through the 13th at the Clovis Veterans Memorial District. There will be, this often can have a broad range of Valley-wide issues. There really is an emphasis this year on transportation and housing. This is open to Valley elected officials, staff. MCAG usually participates at the staff level quite a bit. And we do budget for the executive director, the chair, the vice chair, and the 3 directors who serve on the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council to attend each year under the agency's budget. However, all directors, jurisdictional staff are welcome to attend. It's a reasonable conference. So if you are interested and you do not fall in one of those categories, let me know. We are trying to get as many folks registered who think they will go or hope that or intend to go, because the early bird registration ends at the end of March, but it's a $25 difference if you don't make that early bird rate. So this is just notification, and the draft schedule conference agenda is also in the packet.
Okay. Any questions or comments or pontifications?
I do have a comment. I've attended the Regional Policy Council. I've been a presenter at the Regional Policy Council. And it's a very good one, very informational. I do recommend it because you see what's going on up and down. The problem is Fresno County doesn't participate in it because we've presented our port twice to them, and yet they continue to act towards and steal our port idea into Fresno, and they claim they've never heard about it. Sorry, I just had to make that comment.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. We'll move on to item 17, which is the Executive Director's Report.
I promise I'm working on other staff so you don't have to just keep hearing from me. But this is where we are. So just a couple of things. I just want to, we've talked a lot about the Highway 99 Summit. I think it was a great event for a number of reasons, but I did just want to thank directors Kale and McDaniel and Silvera as members of the Policy Council who attended. I think the state heard loud and clear. And just to kind of balance some of my, I guess, comments on the 285 report, our strategy and the way we've really been working with the state is one of, here are our concerns, here are the things that we may not agree on, but in general, let's figure out how we're going to do this together. So I just wanted to kind of give that balance out that, we're not just putting up a wall and saying your policies and we can't achieve them. They are difficult. They aren't always a one-size-fits-all. So I've really tried to take an approach that helps them understand why they don't work in the region, why they're difficult, and then also how we might be able to find partnerships. So that was also what resulted in the request to develop the subcommittee to kind of further work with the state on the 99 projects. Just a quick note to remind or to point out that the JPA, the draft JPA has been distributed, kicking off the 120-day review process. The individual jurisdictional fact sheets, or we're hoping to have done by today, but we need a few more days and we'll be able to get those. Once those are available, I'll offer to come out and meet with you and your city manager or the county CEO or whatever combination if you need that level of discussion or whatnot. Happy to do that. Also, the city-county dinner is in your packet, the end of the save the date, but it's April 12th. It'll be at the Merced Multicultural Arts Center. I believe tri-tip from Chef Melissa is on the menu. And we will be celebrating the 5-year anniversary of Measure V, and also potentially, most likely, our first $100 million that we have raised, which is well over what we anticipated. And we will also have fresh off the press the Measure V annual report that will be published right at the first part of April. So all of that to come. We will be celebrating all of your successes with the program that night. So hopefully you can be there. Tomorrow, Director McDaniel and I believe Dr. Care will be participating as well. We have our Valley Voice, it's a virtual Valley Voice program that will be meeting with our legislators in Sacramento virtually. And Director McDaniel will be helping speak to Goods Movement and 99. And last thing I'll mention is keep your eyes peeled. Next month, we will be debuting a new staff report template. There's been a lot of discussion about how we can improve some information sharing. So that will begin with our CAC. But just if you look through your packet next month, if you realize, hey, there's whole new sections, just another way to try to, we're always evolving on how we can present the information. So, you'll get it right out hot off the press on that one. I know you're eagerly waiting for it. More information from Stacey. I know that's a shock, but that's where we're heading. So thank you for the time, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We'll move to item 18, which is the director's report. So I'll start to my left and no.
Can we take a over under on how many times Darren will bring up port during the Valley Voice meeting?
Hopefully none.
Just kidding.
No.
I don't think we should because I'm going to have to be the one counting. Yeah. And I only have one pen.
Okay, Director McDaniel.
I'll just say I think I said my piece in the last meeting, and Mr. Kale was there to witness that, and very passionately took it out on Fresno County.
I was in the room next door, and I heard it too. Both doors were closed. Yeah. All right. Director Kale? Director Nagy?
Put. Just like to thank Stacy and staff. Another fine job on the agenda. A lot of information, and all your hard work is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I'll close. Something that I've kind of, and I haven't really hit on a great way to do it yet, but it bothers me that here in Merced County, that sometimes we don't have the capacity that allows people to bid on our projects. Now we're fortunate on the project we approved today. It's a local company. You know, it really bothers me when we have a contract that I know somebody in Merced County could do, but yet somebody in Sacramento or San Francisco or somewhere else gets it, and we may get some labor out of it, but man, all the overhead, all the material purchases all happen somewhere else. So I don't know if any of you have an interest in maybe developing that, maybe some sort of workshop or something countywide. If you do, let me know, and you know, maybe we can work together and come up with a way to facilitate that. Because I know the cities, you all do contracts as well, and it'd be nice if we could help local people be prepared to apply for them.
Well, I'd like to say, it used to have actual contractors groups that were sponsored in the cities that handled a lot of the periphery of that, and to get them, and that's not happening anymore.
Right. Okay. All right. So anyways, just let me know. Outside of that, so on the JPA renewal process, you know, work with your staffs, and if you know, and your legal counsel, and if you find stuff that you're not happy with, it would be better if it come to us sooner than, you know, the end of June or the 1st of July, right? So I just encourage you to do that. And then I don't want to forget Director Faria. Did you have a director report?
No, nothing to report today. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else to become before us? I'll call this meeting adjourned.
Sorry, I hope that isn't distracting when I do it.
No,
but
no.
I saw Joy.